Well, thank you so much for being here with me once again on another episode of A Legacy of Love. And today we have a very special person, and it's such an honor for me to have her and for her to share her own story, her own journey, as we all have a story. Hi, Michelle. Thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yes, well, as you know, and I know, this podcast is about overcoming. It's about, sharing our own journeys and our own adversities and challenges that we faced, maybe at a very young age, maybe a little older in life. Could you share a little bit about what you do, about yourself and your journey?
Yes. I'm Michelle Manley. I am a Soma spiritual mentor and a Reiki master teacher. And my healing journey and spiritual journey started at a young age. I had a beautiful childhood. I was very lucky. I had a very loving, big Italian, boisterous family. But my father died extremely unexpectedly when I was 14, basically in front of me. It was very traumatic. A few years later, I developed fibromyalgia, and I'm confident the trauma of all that and holding in all that pain, I didn't process it. I held it in. I wanted to be strong for my family. You know, I had these ideas of what strength really was. I really thought it meant being stoic and unemotional and tough. Um, I've since come to view strength as a very different thing. But after leaving high school, I was lost. I had gone through 12 years of Catholic school, so I had that structure, but spiritually, it didn't speak to me. There were things that I just didn't understand and didn't agree with. And so after high school, I was a little adrift for a while. And then I explored like nature-based religions, Wicca, different aspects of that. And that spoke to me, but I was never fully in it. It spoke to me in that the sense of personal responsibility and being close to nature very much spoke to me. Um, when I was 26, I lost my grandfather who I was living with very unexpectedly. And that was another tremendous loss in my life. We were very close. Um, and a few months later, I met some people in a fundamentalist Christian church that I now kind of view as a cult who had answers. They were so sure about what life was like and what the answers were that it very much appealed to me. I was very drifting. So I joined this church. It was very restrictive, very much we're the only people that are saved. Nobody else is saved. We've got it figured out, but the rest of the world is lost kind of mentality. Again, this didn't sit right with me. And the whole time I was in this church, I was always told how rebellious I was because I questioned everything. I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense. And how can that be? And I find it hard to believe that God isn't saving other people. Like, I just, none of it made sense to me. But yet I stayed for the community, I think, more than anything. We weren't allowed to date outside the church, and I fell in love with somebody outside the church. So I left. The church's message had been very strong about women being subservient and about God being a punishing God. And so when my marriage quickly turned abusive, I truly thought it was God's punishment for my leaving him. I was really twisted in my thoughts and in my emotions at that point in time. And I stayed for 12 years. I had three wonderful children, but in it, my ex-husband had a lot of mental health issues. So it was up and down. We could go through periods of time where everything would be fine, and then it would be very volatile. And then sometimes it'd be abusive, and then there'd be a lot of road raging and sometimes physical abuse. And it was just always precarious. I never knew what to expect, which is very hard to process. On Mother's Day in 2012, during what we believe was a psychotic episode, my ex-husband tried to run me over with the van, which was extremely dramatic, but I truly feel needed to happen for me to finally wake up to that this was not tenable. I couldn't stay here, that this was not safe. That launched me into a 4-year, very difficult divorce with stalking and restraining orders and volatile outbursts in the courtroom from him. Um, but in that process, there were several things that happened that were amazing. One, I stood up in court and I spoke my truth. And I ended generations of domestic violence in that side of the family. And that was huge. And I felt, as scary as it was probably the most frightening thing I've ever done. I felt so empowered afterwards. Like, no, I spoke my truth and I was believed. And that was huge. Also during that time, I met a lovely human being who came into my life, and he came in during all this chaos, and he stayed and has been just steadfastly by my side the last 13 years. And it's been um, an unexpected blessing. And then I also kind of started exploring spirituality again in small doses. I had been burned very much by religion, and I was very skeptical, but I believed in energy and I believed in the basic goodness of the universe. I believe that, things do work out for us. Maybe not the way that we think it's going to happen, but there is a certain benevolence out there. So I started exploring Reiki and became a Reiki master teacher, which was wonderful. And it has been incredibly empowering for me because in that, I learned to take responsibility for my own energy and my own emotions. And I started allowing my emotions to come up, allowing my emotions to be expressed. I've since gone on to explore deep nervous system healing work, which has been equally beneficial, and somatic healing, all of which I've learned to make friends with my emotions. And that has been so profoundly different than how I lived the first half of my life. It's like night and day to be able to feel and not be afraid of my feelings. Um, in the past several years, I've lost both of my parents, and being at their bedside and walking them home made me realize that I love doing hospice work. As strange as that may sound, I think it's such a sacred and blessed time that I'm heeding the call to become a death doula this fall. That I'm going back to school at 57 years old. Um, and I really want to help people craft that final journey in a way that is sacred and affirming and loving. And I think if I could tie up everything, it has come back to that love transcends death. When I think of all the people I've lost, when I think of all the lessons, it all comes back to love. It all comes back to just connecting with other people in a full and affirming and way that where you also viewing the other person as a whole human being, not just holding them in boxes that you may have for them, but you allow them to be the fullness of who they are. Currently, I offer, as I said, I'm a Soma spiritual mentor and a Reiki master teacher. But as I said, that's going to be slowly shifting over the next year as I expand my practice. But I love what I do. I love being able to share my journey with people because when I look back, I see so many guideposts and signposts and God minutes on the way where it's like something bigger was at hand. And it's very humbling when you look back and you see that, like, I was taken care of. I was taken care of in such a profound way. And it really makes you humble. So that's kind of the short version of my story.
You mentioned losing your dad at a very young age. I know there's going to be a lot of people here that they're going to identify themselves with you because myself, I also lost a parent at a very young age. And it changed totally my life. It changed the way I saw life and death and valued having those loved ones around. What would you tell if there someone that's listening right now that they actually have just lost a loved one, regardless of their, that age that we were in, at 14, or if they were, they're even older, a loss is a loss. What would you tell them? Because, you stayed very quiet. You said that you wanted to be strong and that you didn't want to really say much or share much. What would you tell them? I learned that it's okay to be vulnerable. I learned that it was okay to cry, even though in that generation, I was not really much allowed to share my feelings or my emotions. I had to stay quiet. What would you tell them? because you've already been there on that road.
Very similar. I would say number one, be gentle with yourself. Yes, there are stages of grief, but they often repeat. It's not a linear path. And you may be fine one day and full of tears the next, and it's okay. All those emotions are just love coming up for that person, love for what you had, sadness for what has been lost or feels like it's been lost. I believe love transcends death. I truly believe that. I believe by being the best parts of the person that we love, we help their legacy live on.
Hmm.
But it truly is a matter of allowing the emotions. Don't stuff them. Don't disconnect from them. You know, give them voice. Find safe people that you can just be real with.
Hmm.
Find community that understands you. That it's so incredible when you have people around you that can allow you to have these moments of sadness, have these moments of grief without being like, oh, that person is weak, or oh, that person is, grieving too long. It's such a funny thing that we sometimes think that there's a stopping point for grief. And I still grieve the loss of my dad. It's a core wound. There is still days where the wistfulness and the sadness, like you never get to see his grandkids. That still chokes me up. And it's okay. It's just a sign of great love.
Yes, I agree, definitely. And as you know, you also went into a relationship that was not healthy, and then you were able to come out of it. Uh, thank the Lord, that you were able to recognize that it was not a healthy one. And there's still women right now that are battling, should I stay, should I leave? What would your last message be regarding that about a unhealthy relationship?
Again, I think community is important and getting real with at least one person in your life that this is happening, coming up with a plan. It's incredibly important when leaving an abuser to be strategic. Um, Studies have shown that women are most vulnerable during the period of leaving an abuser. So really kind of thinking ahead, getting involved with the domestic violence support group. They're a clearinghouse for great resources. But really admitting to yourself, I think, was hard for me to say to myself that I was a victim. But I think it's an important step on the journey to say, no, I am being victimized in this. This is not healthy. And sort of embodying that for just a moment, for just long enough to kind of extricate yourself from it. You've got to kind of be it to get out of it.
Yes, and it's okay to know that it's not okay. That means that it's okay to recognize that you are in a bad relationship, but it's not okay to stay in that environment. You need to look and see your life beyond that stage. Now, what would be your last message to these people, the audience, as you're fulfilling this dream of yours of changing and going back to school and wanting to help, and you're mentioning about hospice care? It seems like it's never too late, right, to fulfill a dream, and it's never too late to be your best version and even to go back to school. What would you say in that matter?
I believe that God, the universe, however you look at it, puts things on our hearts for a reason. And I think those are callings. And it doesn't matter, I could look at it like I'm going to be in school a year, and by the time I'm out of school, I'm going to be 58. Well, you know what? God willing, I'm going to be 58 no matter if I go to school or not. So let's pursue our dreams, let's pursue our calling. I believe so firmly that we all have something to offer this world, that we all have this beautiful part of ourselves. We're designed to be interdependent. And that if each of us can live that fullness, that listen to their callings, really pursue those dreams, even if it seems a little wacky, to just give it a chance and see what happens. It's all part of the journey. And, the journey's pretty exciting.
Yes, well, most definitely. I love your message today, and it was such a privilege and an honor to hear your story and how it was transformed, and how you now have that special person in your life for 13 plus years. And thank you for being here with me once again on another episode of A Legacy of Love, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.